that entire process, including the bidding effort, can be done in minutes versus days.
When you look at DayTwo Plus, you can understand how the workflow is super fast and super easy for the end user to be able to get the owner out the door quickly, pay the subs, and move on to the next project.
And that's true innovation, when you can bring something new to the world and then build a business on top of it. Welcome to another edition of STO Building Group Innovation Expo. Today we are behind the scenes and talking to DayTwo Plus, founder and CEO Alex Rothman, and STO Building Group Facilities Construction Services, also known as FCS, Senior Vice President Mike Sci. So Alex, it's great to have you, Mike as well. I think it's really interesting because this is something that we actually co-developed with you and your team.
4 years ago now.
3 years ago now?
4 years ago now. Our anniversary was 4-year anniversary was a couple of months ago in March.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. Right.
And what we did is we set up collectively to solve our clients' problems, which we did. And it all started with a client focus group. We put some clients in the room. We found out what they were looking for in a solution to running their operations, their real estate portfolio, and the work that they have after occupancy, the post-occupancy work that we have with them. And from that, not only did we, I think, develop an incredible platform, but then we also built a business on top of it. And that's true innovation. When you can bring something new to the world and then build a business on top of it, then that's what we believe innovation should be. So Alex, tell us about your journey in our relationship, how we got here and how we got to build this platform.
Being able to look at these service lines and these services, this delivery, not only as a team sport, but in a programmatic way versus only an event-driven or in a reactive or in an on-demand manner. And with the advent of artificial intelligence and the ability to make sense of your information, you can not only do this through the native workflows that we've strived to generate, then you can start to generate the insights, understand your own information, and use this information in these workflows to not only be more responsive, more effective, delivery of better outcomes, but more so take that volume of transactions and you create this sort of clearinghouse of decision-making across this really team sport. And this team sport is pleasing our customers, right? Across a life cycle, a building life cycle, an asset life cycle, a project life cycle, right? An employee's journey within our firms or within our alliance partners or affiliate partners, right? All these journeys today, in a lot of ways across many sectors, are disjointed by technologies, by separation across the outsourced and insourced connection of businesses. So the theory of what DayTwo Plus and the collaboration with STO Building Group are able to do together is create a unified, connected experience, a single operating team, which is the conjunction of this platform of the people, processes, and technology all being elevated through not only their collective decision intelligence, but then supported even further by this driving artificial intelligence.
Well, and to really put it very simply, we as the construction managers and the relationships that we have with our clients, we want to complete that life cycle relationship. It's all about the relationship and it's about servicing our clients. And, we are very much into doing that small work, right? Mike, that's what your team does. You're helping us complete the life cycle of the relationship with our clients. After the build, post-occupancy, Mike's team comes in and stays with our client until whatever their next need is. So Mike, why don't you tell us a bit about the team that's been built and the services that you're providing, which is something that's really been foundational and basic to our organization from the beginning.
Sure. So FCS was developed as a facilities construction services group, really meant to implement the DayTwo type of work that comes after a large project, or the programmatic multi-site work that most of our clients want to see in areas they can't necessarily get to. So it may not be campus work, but it may just be assets that are in difficult to reach locations. But from an owner's perspective, where I have a great deal of background, owners want it to be very simple. They don't want to go to 12 different people in 12 different states. They'd much prefer one person who can reach them. So when you look at STOBG and FCS, what's the challenge to doing that, right? They have the reach, certainly across the country, but the platform that they work on is very robust, right? It's meant for very large projects, which in turn most of the BUs have to utilize for audit, transparency, accounting purposes. But when you're doing these type of projects, you need a software that's nimble, quick, can get you through a process flow, because speed to market becomes the most relevant thing. Certainly when you look at DayTwo Plus, you can understand how the workflow is super fast and super easy for the end user to be able to get the owner out the door quickly, pay the subs, and move on to the next project. So the need was definitely there for this type of baseline platform.
So because the service needs to be agile, right? The team needs to have the agility to move with what the client needs very quickly. You needed a platform to actually kind of marry with that and provide the services, and that's what DayTwo Plus is providing for you.
100%.
Right? Tell me about some of the things where I think may have been surprises along the way in not only development, but implementation. What are some of the surprises that you faced?
So Mike, I'll kick in and by all means, and talking about really this implementation here together. I thought one of the more pleasant surprises has been the onboarding. When we look at the onboarding lifecycle with both your end clients, the owners or architects or consultants, as well as on the other side of the marketplace, the trades, and the vendors, and then of the vendors, employee and workforces. When I looked at this morning some of the numbers and stats, and just really in the past 90 to 120 days, over 600 buildings, over 5,000 assets across those buildings tagged and organized in the system, over 300 end clients with over 3,000 employees onboarding the system across over 1,000 different companies across the U.S. and Canada.
Well, when you talk about those numbers, for example, first of all, it indicates success, right, of the platform. It indicates success of the model of delivery of services. It certainly indicates like the need that the client has, right? It's filling that, I guess, void or vacuum that your team has provided. So there's the technology piece, but then there's also, you got people delivering this service work. Tell me about the different type of person. So when we think about construction, traditional superintendent, traditional roles, tell me about the difference of the role that you've been developing.
Yeah, so, depending on complexity of construction projects, right, you need a certain skill set that's very advanced. Smaller work is much more getting it done, pleasing a client. So it's much more, I'm going to call it retail centric, but it's more sales, like smile on your face, delivering with being happy about doing your job, continuing to communicate with the owner, etc., and let them know where you are. But you have to be a service-oriented person that wants to please a client. So the people in the group, it's important to hire the people who want to implement that pleasing the client mentality, along with an efficient software where you don't need somebody super senior like an Alex. You can create a platform where people work in a software that's similar to the way they live. And that's what DayTwo did, right? It lets it look similar to what they spend their daily life doing on apps, on websites. Very important.
Very, very well said. And that's sort of the reaction we wanted it to evoke. We wanted the user to enter sort of the workspace and it to be familiar enough, right? Because the workspace we ultimately created was essentially the integration of what would normally be, 13 to 16 different technologies when you look across the components that make up your project delivery, right? But one of the other efforts we try to encourage in the development, and ultimately what we see today in the output, is there's a variety of workspaces across the platform depending on your role and your level of engagement. You have a specialized workspace. that you're in, and you're able to engage in both on a detail-oriented level as well as on a scaled-up macro level, which I think is very important when you look at the ability to scale your data not only from the level of a client, but be able to cut it based on region and sector type and role. And with a company like STO Building Group, across your 14 brands, the ability to organize that and operate the way you do. Operating as multiple businesses, but at the same time being able to aggregate the information to one place when you want it. But at the same time, any respective business unit is able to operate and run their business, their clients, their vendors, and their information. But we're not taking away from sharing that decision intelligence that's constantly being built. And an example of the creation Mike Sci was talking about, we can see in just the reports, across the business unit, utilization of the workspaces and the AI, but the platform is designed as sort of that open workspace, that sort of stencil book, and saying, tell us what you're interested in. Advise us of how you would like to run your business and the workflow.
So there's the agility of the platform itself from an owner's standpoint, single floor, single building, multiple buildings across multiple markets. It has the ability to expand and then customize to see what's important.
Right, and as a data point for that, another thing I looked at this morning as a precursor to this, you guys may be surprised to hear the number, but a little over 500 charts and over 100 different templates, from contract POs, from estimating templates, inspection templates, RFI submittals, and over 100 business intelligence in terms of charts, graphs, tables, way you run and operate your business. This is smart, smart logic, smart ways of, this is how I look at my business effectively.
But we're talking about two businesses in parallel. You're talking about the business of real estate and managing the real estate from the client side. And then we're talking about how does Mike run his business on top of the platform?
Right.
Sort of where the rubber hits the road of implementation. And we talked about the efficiency and the agility. Talk a little bit about that and how you're able to, I guess, run such a lean crew across so many clients, across so many properties, and still get a high approval rating back from the client to say, the job was great, closed out, done, repeat work, more and more work. That's where the success really lies.
Yeah, and I think it's like anything else. People talk about BI and other people use the word dashboarding, right? So dashboards are relevant in a multitude of arenas. It's not just for the owner to see how their portfolio is performing, but for me, how the workforce and how the volumes are coming in, where it is in the pipeline, right? So dashboarding is very relevant anytime you have a lot of things that you're trying to organize. So I think that comes into play with how to look at the workflow and decide where you need expensive people and then where you need less expensive people, and modeling the cost that makes sense to both the client and internally to yourself to make sure you maximize the people in the process.
Right. And obviously, we call it tech anxiety right now. There's so much that we're pushing out there to our superintendents on projects, just layers and layers. A lot of it is making us very efficient. I think a lot of it is making us better, safer. A lot of the quality is going up. We're identifying risk. And the last thing you want to do is give something to somebody, a tool to somebody that's going to impede the progress and impede the way they do business. But it sounds like from our conversations previously that it's being very well adopted by us internally, even by the subcontractor base as well. So there's this ease of use. Alex was talking about it before, of putting something in the hands of the user, whether it's the client or the service provider, that's very familiar to them. It works on an app, it works on an iPad, it works on a desktop, and all those things. Tell me a little bit about the experience and the feedback you've gotten from us, our internal users, and then maybe from the subcontractors.
Yeah, so I think if you were to take the comparison of the existing condition to do a project of, let's say, $50,000 in the old system versus the new, the efficiency and the speed that a person's workload can get through the process is cut more than in half, right? And I think a lot of people measure efficiencies in dollars and cents, but you have to truly measure it in time, right? Because then you get into, if this person has more time, maybe they can do more projects, right? So the gearing ratio for the person becomes extremely visible, that you typically don't have visibility into how long does a task take. So for us, that's an important part longer term. The other thing, I think your point that you made, there were two points, if I can go back to, that were really critical. You had mentioned tech anxiety. I think a lot of people fundamentally roll out a technology that has its best case use, and instead of rolling it out with its baseline case use that still makes you efficient, and then over time adding the bells and whistles after the fact, so that this way you can get the adoption you want and then slowly add on without everything all at once. I think that's something that we as an organization have to be careful of. Sometimes less is more to start and put in a runway down the road. The other point that I think was super valuable, and you kind of brushed over, but I think is very important to say, STOBG, or at least the time Structure Tone 30 years ago, was very, very, very efficient at doing small programmatic projects work. With success comes growth, and sometimes with growth means picking a lane. And the lane that most of the 14 business units have taken was the larger scopes of work, which is fine, but then that means there's a whole market share of people in our industry that don't recognize the brand at the smaller level. So pushing down into the smaller projects is a great brand visibility perspective, that people now recognize the brand, where 30 years ago it was recognized all the way through the life cycle.
Better automation, machine learning, the advent of artificial intelligence, just being the right workspace in one place. Just that. Not having to open up 5 or 6 screens and just being in one place. That latency that's being solved across these tasks, right? Just the throughput time.
What we did, we worked very hard at understanding what those workflow processes were, streamlining them, and just taking out the essential pieces that we need, right? Just the essential touches, the most minimal touches. To Mike's point of, there could be a lot of other bells and whistles to be put onto it, but just get that very streamlined process down pat. Start there, get everybody in the system as much as possible, get the repeatability with the amount of projects that we're working through, because that's one of the challenges that we've had in the industry, is the lack of repeatability. But with these small projects, with the same clients in the same building, with the same subcontractors, the same delivery, you get that repeatability. And that's where the agentive AI can kick in really well and start learning from that. And that's that next level, Mike, that you're talking about, that, okay, now what can it do? Now how can we use it in that other level, which is the whole piece of the puzzle that says, now you can, not take a step back completely, but you can take a little bit of a step back, and the agentive AI is working in the background and saying, these are the problems, these are the places where you may have problems on your project. Go address those. And then that becomes your team, I think, being able to take on even more work per individual, and then really scaling up. So I think you hit it perfectly to say, there's a baseline of how we use the technology. We know the services that we have to provide. Little by little, you start building more and more up. And when you see that, you're going to be delivering more work with less people, right? The information, the data that you're going to have at your fingertips is also going to be the information that our client has. And then they can use it how they want it and see it how they want to slice it and dice it. And then they become a smarter client. We become smarter collectively. They're able to run their real estate.
Right, you get this sort of decision intelligence network effect. Each party is essentially made that much more effective.
So I'm going to ask this question from 2 points of view. It has to do with our target clients. So Mike, I'm going to ask you first, what are the target clients for you? Where do you feel that the team, FCS, can service the clients best?
It's a really good question, right? Originally, I think the mindset was take clients that have just campuses and work within campuses where we can stay local inside the campus and not focus too much on multi-site distributive model of locations. We've since learned that both work, right? That we can support both clients. I think the best client for us would be a client that has a fairly large footprint nationally, and in some instances internationally where we can support them, that need people on a constant basis doing some kind of work upkeep throughout the location. It could be on the facility side, it could be on the capital side, but there's always that constant churn of work.
And obviously, the client does not have to be in the system, right? And the client doesn't have to be tech savvy.
It's a good point, right? Because you'll find that I think if you were to poll most clients, they're going to say, I have enough of my problems and my own tech. I don't want to be in yours, right? I want you to do it. But I think the important thing to explain to the client is we need this to make us efficient. We're happy to share it, but we need it. But most clients in general, as a rule, do not want to be in somebody else's platform. They have 20 or 30 of their own to manage.
That's great. Thanks. And Alex, from your point of view, building the DayTwo Plus platform before, right, we had the clients in the room, you said 4 years ago, a little more than 4 years ago. With them in mind, what is your target client base?
Well, Mike Sci had a great transition kick-up point for me to the point of the clients having 20 and 30 of their own mess. So the advent of DayTwo Plus was solving for those who have this currently complex tech stack and people stack. And when you look at, okay, what is that market? You know, that market is these end clients, these large distributed, landowners, whether they be operator, enterprise blue chip companies across different industries, but distributed landowners that have this pain point of not only a complex tech stack, but also a distributed complex people stack, their own people as well as third-party contractors. So where there's complexity across differentiated technologies, across in-house and third-party groups, there's opportunity, there's waste. And I believe DayTwo Plus is here to meet that opportunity on behalf of that complexity. On a similar side, I think this collaboration works so well because STO Building Group, it's in its position as the manager, has the complexity on both ends of the supply chain. You have the activities from your fulfillment, from the vendors and the trades, and you have the activities from your alliance partners and architect and engineer partners. And then similar from the engagement and interaction in your activities with your end consumers and your owners. So we fit our opportunity, our use case is where there is this comparable complexity across your supply chain. And we solve that in a marketplace service, which is just an end-to-end wrap, a singular native solution suite for the entirety of your supply chain.
Perfect.
One wrap.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation. And just based on the numbers that we were talking about and how young the service group is, I would love to have you guys back in a few months and see how we're doing, do a little check-in, see where we may have gone to step up a little bit of using more of the bells and whistles, to your point. So Alex and Mike, thank you so much for being here and look forward to talking soon.